that would be great. George.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Secretary of State, Permanent Secretary. Thank you, and thank you for setting out such a bold programme of R&D-driven growth. Personally, I support it. I support the industrial strategy, and it's great to see. But I wanted to ask three questions, really. One about money, one about sectors, clusters, and one about delivery. On money, we've had a nice letter from the Department setting out an £86 billion R&D package over the spending review period. I was proud to get total R&D funding to $20 billion a year. Could I just check, $20 billion a year over a traditional CSR is 20, 40, 60. Over two CSRs is 120. Over the 10 years that Minister Vallance wisely talked about trying to do things over 10 years, that's a lot more. So could you, Permanent Secretary, just outline for us what the 86 billion number covers? And I'm particularly interested in how much of that is going through UKRI and how much of it not, and then we'll get into delivery. But first of all, Permanent Secretary, the money, could you?
Yeah, so the £86 billion figure is across the 4 years of the spending review. Off that, 58.5 billion is the part that will go through DCIT's budgets. The largest part of that, as you would expect, goes through UKRI, so that's 38.6 billion over the 4 years of the spending review period that will go through UKRI. In addition to the money that goes through UKRI, there is, for example, the money that goes towards our association to EU programs such as Horizon. That's the next biggest budget after UKRI, so that's about 8.7 billion. There's then 2.8 billion that goes to the UK Space Agency, 1.5 billion that goes to the Met Office, and 1.2 billion that goes to the Advanced Research and Innovation Agency. Those are some of the big budgets. So those together go to the 58.5 billion that is DCIT's share of the overall R&D budget. The difference between that and the 86 billion is the R&D budgets that are held by other departments, where MOD, DHSC, DESNES and DBT, I think, are the biggest holders elsewhere in government of R&D budgets.
Thank you. So it's first point, actually, we're now on 4-year spending reviews, not 3, which is a step forward. So it's 58 billion goes through DCIT, and 28 in other rest of government, other departments. Could I just check? Minister Vallance kindly said UKRI's. He set out the 3 buckets: blue sky, growth, and sovereign missions. Again, I support that. It was a bucket category I tried to impose on UKRI, and they bitterly fought back in defence of blue sky. He set out 14 billion for blue sky, 7 billion for growth, and 8 billion for sovereign missions. That's 29, plus 7 for talent and infrastructure. Is the talent and infrastructure through UKRI, or is that across government?
I expect the talent and infrastructure figure will also include the money that goes to the national academies. And some of the infrastructure spend will be in the other lines, such as potentially the Met Office line. We can break it down for you at the next level if that's helpful for the committee and write on that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay. So I think the point for colleagues is DCIT has a big chunk, but there's a big chunk across the rest of government, which I'll come to the delivery question in a moment. Thank you. Could I ask...
Sorry, George, just to confirm, though, that big chunk across the rest of the government isn't actually ring-fenced for science, so we can't say...
Science, research, innovation and technology across government.
But it's not ring-fenced in each department.
Is that right?
I don't... These allocations are published, and so they are confirmed R&D budgets across government. And as you've just heard me say, we are accumulating those to construct an overall figure for R&D spend across government. So we've made a commitment across the spending review period to spending that amount of money on R&D across government.
I'm going to jump to my delivery question, because this is exactly where this goes. We set up in an attempt to try and bring some coordinated cross-government delivery to this, the National Science and Technology Council. I have to say it became a bit of a talking shop, to be honest, but it was an attempt to drive that cross-government leadership. And that's at Secretary of State cabinet level. I also set up a Minister of State delivery team so that across those key departments, DCIT, DEFRA, DBT, DESNES, Department of Health, and now defence. Can you just talk through what the delivery infrastructure is so that the public can see the 86 billion being deployed in support of cross-government growth, jobs, not just poured into an academic silo, which is, I think, what sometimes voters fear?
So I think I would characterise it as there's probably 3 levels of activity that we're engaged in to manage this across government. I think the first level is the data itself. And so we work with all government departments to ensure we've got really good spending data on R&D spend. So we consolidate all of that data, and we've built up sort of, I think you will have seen some of it when you were a minister. We were in the early days of putting it together. It's what we call the R&D stack across government. Yeah. So it starts with having that really clear data picture. I think that data picture then allows us to engage in much more effective advocacy across government, and we do that in collaboration with the Government Chief Scientific Advisor and the Treasury. A really important moment for that was, for example, in the run-up to the spending review, to ensure that there was real clarity about where departments were putting in bids to the spending review that were R&D relevant and what that would do to the overall shape of R&D spend. So I'd say our second role is advocacy. And then the third role, which is once budgets have been allocated, is about managing that portfolio. Now, of course, departments are responsible for their budgets via their accounting officers and secretaries of state. But what we do is we have a portfolio management approach to cross-government R&D, where DSIP brings together, again, with the Government Chief Scientific Advisor, the Chief Scientific Advisors of departments, particular focus on the departments that are big spenders of R&D, and the senior official level budget holders. And we do that with the Treasury to be able to look at R&D spending and to manage across the portfolio.
Okay.
And as you would expect, there'll be lots of opportunities to join up programs, because if departments deliver their programs on their own, they might not spot the opportunities for collaboration. So we want to help to make that happen. We want to avoid situations where 2 departments are essentially talking to the same research team about funding something very similar.
Thank you. I suppose what I'm really asking is, it's, governments have a cycle, don't they? You make a big announcement, you set out the industrial strategy, and then it's about delivery. So what I'm wondering is, where do the necessarily tough, internal delivery challenge questions come? So where is the conversation going to happen when the defence industry says, why is UKRI not properly backing defence tech? I'm wondering where, on life sciences, when the industry, as they've said to us, it says you're spending 9 billion across the 3 years on life science research, but you're not backing innovation into the system properly. I'm just wondering, where does that joined-up conversation about delivery happen?
Yeah. Where it relates to UKRI specifically, and I realise you're speaking more widely than that, but just to cover the couple of examples that you gave, we've been trying with the new leadership at UKRI, with Ian Chapman coming in as Chief Executive, to get to a sharper set of strategic objectives and measures for UKRI. And Ian and his team have really worked with us very closely on this. We published those as part of the UKRI Annual Summit last week. And I think what you'll see from these is these are clearly, there's more to do on these. Some of them are quite process in nature. They're about doing a certain thing, but some of them start to get very firmly into the space of measuring for outcomes. So, for example, one of the key results that we'll be assessing UKRI against is demonstrating that they're getting an at least 3-to-1 ratio in leveraged co-investment for some of the key programs, including one of the ones in life sciences.
Strongly welcome that. That was one of the things I was pushing, and Ian Chapman, I think, is fantastic. UKRI's strongest defenders would not suggest that it is the Formula One engine that we really need to put 24 billion odd around a year into the system. So I welcome that work. I suppose Secretary of State, I'm thinking more about across government, the political, the ministerial leadership. Where do you see that, and where do you fit into that?
You're absolutely right to say that what's underlying your question is it's taxpayers' money. It needs to go on clear, whilst I think it's absolutely right to protect the sort of curiosity-led research, that we need to make sure we're focused on delivering the outcomes that we set as a government, and that we get the best bang for our buck. And you, when you were a minister, tried to pull the levers to get this working. we are doing that in the way that Emran described too. Is there more we can do? I'm absolutely sure that there is, because what we need to do is, I mean, even if I look within our own pipeline from maybe, if I think about it, we have Innovate UK, then UKRI, then the British Business Bank, then the National Wealth Fund. How do we actually make sure that there's a proper pipeline there? How do we use the power of public and government procurement to, not pick individual winners, but it's right to set a strategic priority as a government and to make sure we're talking to each other. Certainly, there's some of the conversations I'm having with Cabinet colleagues, because there's far more that we need to do together on this. But as you'll know from your experience, you can set up a cross-government committee, and if it ends up just being a talking shop, that's not going to work.
And can I commend you on follow the money? Because
Yeah.
I think the best answer to the public is this 86 billion is going to unlock a lot of private investment. Do you have any plans to measure what that number is by sector, by department, in total? It would be very powerful, I think, if we could have an annual or a moment where we say, look, that number used to be X, we've increased it by 20%, more money is coming in. Do you have any plans to have that conversation across government?
There's individual things that we're doing, for example, and we may come on to this at some point later in the discussion around advanced market commitments in AI hardware, around the Sovereign AI Fund, where we got public money that we want to put into leveraging private money, and we'll need to make sure that we actually deliver that and have some outcomes and some figures to prove for. But you're asking for that at the sort of
meta level.
And I think that is something, a point very well made.
My last question is just on to link back to priorities. I heard you loud and clear, growth, great, and then digital government, digital modernisation of democracy and government, and online safety. 2 digital out of 3. I'm just wondering, the industrial strategy, I welcome it. It's pretty high level. It covers the vast majority of the economy. We set out before 8 great technologies, and I'm just wondering where the sort of robotics, advanced manufacturing, space, clean tech, materials, agri-tech, those clusters around the country, it looks a bit as though DCIT's become the AI deep tech department for a modern government, rather than the research department.
I understand why you're saying that. I am crystal clear that our world-leading life sciences are integral to this government's strategy on growth. It's why we have the life sciences sector plan. We are in the R&D funding, actually, I think, doubling the amount of investment in critical technologies, and that does include engineering, biology, as well as AI and quantum. So it is broad. The reason that I have this, particular focus on reforming public services and digital tech is I think it is long overdue. And why I focused on the sort of safety and skills aspect is because I think these developments are happening so rapidly, we've got to give people confidence.
Yeah.
But if you look at what particularly Patrick Vallance has led on research and development and the life sciences sector plan, and indeed, maybe we'll come on to it at some point, but the pharma deal we've just done is we are world leading in that. We are determined to continue doing that. That is a non-negotiable for this government.